Published in 1943, The Fountainhead was Ayn Rand's first major success. More than 6 million copies sold and translated into 20 languages. It tells the story of an intelligent young architect named Howard Roark, who's somewhat similar to someone like Steve Jobs, who goes against the grain and established convention in order to innovate. Of course, Steve Jobs became the establishment himself, and that's how human society works. You break the old and create the new until you become the old and someone else comes along and breaks down what you created and builds something newer. This is evolutionary biology 101 applied to social change. So the underlying philosophy is that we are ultimately alone, and an ideal man's job is to pursue his goal of achieving something, and nobody except himself can help him. So you can see that Ayn Rand was writing against socialism, which was dominating the eastern part of Europe in the 1940s when the novel was published. And National Socialism of Hitler was dominating the central part of Europe. Only America and some Western European nations were carrying the free market capitalism torch. The protagonist, Roark, roars like a lion against those who conform and sees them as second-handers who rely on the creativity and productivity of someone like him. A good analogy would be a lion that kills a prey and a bunch of lazy scavenging hyenas eat the meat. These lazy people include Peter Keating, a fellow architect, Ellsworth Toohey, a socialist critic, Gail Wynand, a tabloid publisher, and most importantly, Dominique Francon, his girlfriend, who moves like a pendulum between collectivism and individualism. We are in 1922, the Jazz Age, the Roaring Twenties, when the Great Gatsby was having lavish parties in his New York mansion. The young architect student, Howard Roark, finds himself expelled from university for not following architectural conventions. He heads to New York and gets himself a job with a famous architect named Henry Cameron. Life is okay, but things change when one of his former classmates, Peter Keating, who wasn't very bright and whom he helped with his homework, graduates with a degree and gets a job at a more prestigious company. Peter, a mediocre student at best, but socially cunning, quickly moves up the career ladder and becomes a partner. This is so unfair. Howard, the real genius, is still toiling at a struggling company. But things get worse. The company collapses when the owner dies, and to add salt to injury, Peter hires Howard. But wait, he's soon fired by Cameron, Peter's partner, for refusing to design a building in the convention style. Things go from bad to worse. He gets odd jobs here and there and even opens his own company but finds no client. At his lowest, he finds a job at a quarry owned by Cameron, Peter's business partner. But wait a minute. Here, Howard meets a young female journalist, Dominique, who is incidentally Cameron's daughter. There's love at first sight, but it's not all rosy. Their first sexual experience is pretty rough and animalistic, which according to her is non-consensual. It doesn't end there. Later, when Howard returns to New York to work on a building project, Dominique attacks his work in her newspaper column, but at the same time secretly comes to him from some rough sex from time to time. While she enjoys the rough sex in secret, in public she talks shit about him to her colleagues. One of her newspaper colleagues, Ellsworth Toohey, a socialist, uses his media influence to destroy Howard's reputation by setting him up to design a building. A wealthy man commissions Howard to design a temple. We know Howard. He is not a conventional man. He designs a nude statue of Dominique in the temple, which the socialist journalist uses to persuade the owner to sue the architect for malpractice. They go to court and all the journalists testify against Howard. As expected, the rebel architect loses the case. Not only that, he also loses the woman. Now, to add salt to injury, Dominique, his sneaky link, not only abandons him, but also marries his fiercest rival, Peter Keating. Not only that, she does everything to support her man, and she even cheats on him with clients in order to get him more clients. In other words, she wants her husband financially well off, even if it means sleeping with other men. You gotta be kidding me. Ayn Rand shows that women only love you when you have something going for yourself. A defeated man gets no sympathy from women. This is Nature 101. Male animals fight and the winner gets to mate, and the loser? Well, our rebellious architect Howard continues with his work in the shadow of his mediocre classmate Peter Keating. But here's a twist, perhaps a bit far-fetched. But let me tell you, Dominique, while married to Keating, has an affair with her boss at the newspaper, Gail Wynand. Why? Because he's looking for an architect and she wants him to hire her husband for the job. But the twist that seems unbelievable is that the boss, Gail Wynand, falls in love with Dominique and pays her husband Keating a huge sum of money to divorce her so she can marry her. Ayn Rand's female character is not an independent thinker. She hops from winner to winner like a bunny, or a monkey from branch to branch for a better man. She marries her newspaper boss. Her new husband, Gail Wynand, is still searching for an architect. It turns out all his favorite buildings are designed by one man. Who could it be? After a quick search, we find out that it's none other than our protagonist, the anti-establishment Howard. Now we come full circle. Now we enter a phase that is called the redemption period in a hero's journey. Gail Wynand befriends Howard, hoping to get him to design a house for him and his wife Dominique, unaware that in the past she used the same man for some wild, rough sex from time to time. Not only Dominique used Howard for some raw sex, the other architect, Peter Keating, also used the rebel man in most of his successful design projects. In other words, our unconventional hero is not only an animal in bed, he is also a brilliant architect. But as things look up for him, Ayn Rand throws a spanner in the works. While designing a building with his former classmate Peter Keating, Howard makes him promise not to change his design. But when the building is complete, it looks nothing like what he had designed. Our hero is outraged. He takes matter into his own hand and burns the building. He's arrested and put on trial. Everyone condemns the man except his new friend Gail Wynand, who defends him in his newspaper at a huge cost to his business. People cancel his newspaper and his staff go on strike. Dave Chappelle and Netflix all over here. But when the pressure mounts, the boss caves in and apologizes to his staff and condemns his new friend Howard. This 180-degree change of mind is going to be costly, at least in the bedroom. Women like men with a backbone. Only one man has a backbone in the novel, and that's Howard, who is sitting pretty in jail awaiting trial. At the trial, he defends his stance that a man must have integrity because without it, he's nothing else. Much to everyone's surprise, he's found not guilty. Our hero is redeemed. Guess what? Do you remember Dominique, who was married to Peter Keating, then married Gail Wynand? She jumped ship for the third time. Now Dominique and Howard are together. Not only that, Gail Wynand understands that a man needs a backbone, so to redeem himself, he commissions Howard to build a huge skyscraper in New York. At the end, one of the most symbolic scenes is when Dominique climbs up the new building to be with, you guessed it, the winner, Howard. They walk into the sunset together. Well, you cannot walk into the sunset from the top of a skyscraper unless you're insane. But you get the point. Now I'll discuss some of the themes of Fountainhead. Ideal man. So for Ayn Rand, an ideal man is someone who goes against the grain in social conventions in pursuit of excellence, not conformity. A new alpha male not only has to fight others in social conventions, but also has to be a brilliant mind. That's what women are attracted to. According to Rand, women generally do not want mediocre men without a backbone, integrity, and independent thoughts. Men who flip-flop and quickly bend to the will of others are not to be trusted. In other words, Peter Keating and Gail Wynand chased money and social validation, and they ultimately lost as a result. If the prize for man is to win the heart of a woman, he must have a goal and stick to it. Peter Keating was a tree climber who used his cunning mind to reach the top without doing the work, always tried to please others, and never swam against the current. The fact that Howard had to fight others in school, workplace, and even in his romantic pursuit meant that he was robust and didn't give an S to what others thought of it. He only listened to his own inner voice. That independent thinking combined with a brilliant vision allowed him to change his world based on how he saw things. So a visionary man coupled with a strong will can create a new empire, state building in New York. Beside a great vision and strong will, you need technical knowledge. Do you know what the best way is to hone your technical skills? Brilliant makes it easy for anyone to learn mathematics, engineering, computer science, and data analysis. Brilliant has thousands of lessons from foundational to advanced in all these highly important disciplines, with new lessons added monthly. Brilliant is a unique learning platform designed to be interactive and practical. For example, an introduction to probability course, you can gain insight by working with real data sets from sources like Starbucks, X, formerly known Twitter, Spotify, and more, and explore topics like how recommendation algorithms know what content you will like. To help you get started, try Brilliant for free for a full 30 days. So go to brilliant.com/fictionbeast or click on the link in the description. You will also get 20% off an annual premium subscription. Thank you, Brilliant, for sponsoring this video. How about an ideal woman? Well, the novel has one major female character, Dominique, who has her own inner conflict. While she enjoys intimacy with Howard, a man who doesn't give an S to anyone, but at the same time she is a practical woman who is seeking a secure and comfortable nest so she can lay her eggs. She wants to be with Howard, but not at all cost. For Ayn Rand, her female character is a woman who wants to be with a strong man who is also a winner. The fact that she jumped between three men showed that she mostly followed her pragmatic head. When Keating was winning by climbing the career ladder, she married him, but he lacked individuality. And when Gail Wynan was winning as a wealthy newspaper owner who had come from nothing, she was with him. But he lost his backbone as he only wanted power and nothing else. And finally, when Howard was redeemed, she came to him because he was neither seeking power nor social acceptance. He was a genius who didn't give a nest to anything but ingenuity and innovation. Only Howard had her heart and her head. The other two men were simply means to an end for her. So female mating strategy is to be with someone who is capable of changing society and respected by others and secure enough to have a nice nest where their kids can grow in safety and comfort. Of course, feminists would have a serious problem with Ayn Rand, and especially with her female character Dominique, who instead of changing the world herself as an empowered woman, always aligned herself with the strong men. The scene of rough sex between Dominique and Howard specifically has been called a clear case of rape, and some feminists called Rand as a self-hating woman. Rand argues that Dominique had invited Howard and she ultimately went back to him despite that difficult scene. By the end of the novel, she chose him. Individualism versus collectivism. Rand also takes a huge swipe at socialism through the character of the newspaper journalist Ellsworth Tuhey, who uses all kinds of weapons, including deception, to destroy people's self-worth and sense of individual autonomy, because he sees the world through the lens of class, not individual. His main philosophy is selflessness, altruism, and equality. Therefore, he condemns anyone promoting selfishness or individual pursuits. Ayn Rand's choice of architecture is perhaps a symbolic swipe at socialism, that ultimately we all want to live in our own house, not in some commune where we share a big building with lots of people. Animals defend their caves and territories with their lives, and humans are no different. Our evolutionary goal is to work hard and build a nest where our kids can grow and do the same. We are not like ants or insect colonies that we all work for others. Our natural tendencies are individualistic and selfish. And Rand says not only there is nothing wrong with being selfish, but also argues that being selfish brings the best out of us. When you work for others, you have no motivation to do your best. We find meaning by working for our own goals set by ourselves, not goals set by the state or our parents. People in the past were forced to live together, but as technology has improved, our architecture has allowed us to be more individualistic. This aligns with what we innately want: Kids, we want a room of our own. When we grow up, a house of our own. The novel, despite being criticized by the left and feminists, has been extremely successful around the world. Not only has it inspired many architects and writers, it has also been adapted to films and television many times.